Hello again, rail fans, and welcome back to another video. In this one, we're heading down into South Georgia and eventually into Florida during the days of May 28th through June 1st of 2023. We would start out by heading south on Highway 75 before getting off at Vienna, Georgia to follow the CSX Fitzgerald subdivision from there to Waycross to see what we could find along the way. And right after getting off the highway, we were only able to get to the south side of Vienna before having to pull off the road to set up for our first train, being northbound intermodal I-126. After catching I-126 at Vienna, everything would go pretty much quiet until we would reach the outskirts of Fitzgerald, Georgia, where over the radio it sounded like a southbound train was coming up behind us. And after a few signal callouts, we would come to find out that this train was southbound manifest M515 out of Radnor Yard in Nashville, Tennessee, down to Rice Yard in Waycross, Georgia.
515 clear, north end of Fitzgerald, 269, 52 south.
Detector, milepost 662.1, no defect. Repeat, no defect. Total axle 606. Detector out.
The traffic in downtown Fitzgerald would make us fall so far behind M515 that we wouldn't catch back up to him until the outskirts of Douglas, Georgia, where it would be meeting a northbound M605 in the Upton siding at a rolling meet, which would give us the advantage to leapfrog him down to the middle of Saginaw siding about 7 miles south of Douglas, where he'd be doing every bit of track speed through here, which I believe is 60 miles an hour.
15 clear north end of Saginaw, 269, 52 south.
After catching M515 at Saginaw, we would move on into Waycross, but pretty much everything was dead, so we would keep on moving south until we reached Folkston. Folkston is where the Jessup sub from Waycross and the Nahunta sub from Jessup come together and head south, where trains can go to Jacksonville and point south, or take a right turn at Callahan, Florida and head to Baldwin and point south. We would arrive in Folkston just after 5:45 p.m., and we already knew of a few trains that would be coming in our direction in the nenext few hours, and since we weren't on a time crunch, we would be able to stay out for all of those trains. The first one would be northbound phosphate loads, B207. 207 runs as needed out of CSX's Mulberry Yard in the Bone Valley region in central Florida up to Cicero, Illinois for the BNSF Railway. 207's lash-up would be quite the nice one, with 2 BNSF GEVOs, a CSX GEVO, and a CSX AC 4400 all at the head end. Just over an hour later, and our next train would show up, this one being Southbound Autoracks M203, out of Osborne Yard in Louisville, Kentucky, down to Baldwin, Florida. 203 would also have a neat lash-up, with the lead motor being a rebuild CM44AC, but the trailing unit would be CSXT number 5, which is still at the time the lowest numbered AC4400, still in the YN2 paint scheme, yet to be rebuilt into a CM44AC.
M20326, got a limited clear, Folkston, turnout, track 1, lead engine, 7241, sub out.
Give it another 20 minutes, and here's local shuttle L796 coming out of Moncrief Yard in Jacksonville, heading back to Rice Yard in Waycross. Even though this train is considered a local because of how short its run is, it'll sometimes extend over 10,000 feet long. Next up would be Amtrak northbound Silver Meteor PO98 as it heads for its next station stop in Jessup, Georgia, along its way to New York City. As the light starts to fade away, one more train will be on our radar, being northbound auto train PO52, as it flies through here at Folkston on its almost non-stop journey from Sanford, Florida to Lorton, Virginia. We're now back out on May 30th, 2023, down in Lakeland, Florida, along CSX's Lakeland subdivision just outside of their Winston yard, as we wait on Amtrak's northbound Silver Star, PO92, as it has just departed its Lakeland station stop and flies westward past us for its next station stop in Tampa. About an hour and a half later now, and we're set up in downtown Plant City, Florida, waiting on Amtrak 92 again, as it has now departed its Tampa station stop as it heads back north for its final destination of New York City. Just under 10 minutes later, and we got another clear signal at the Plant City interlocking, this one being for northbound Priority Intermodal IO44, out of Uceda Yard in Tampa, Florida, up to Duval Yard in Jacksonville, Florida.
CSXT IO44, 30, Limo CSXT 7242, got clear North Cherry, northbound out.
IO44 would be the last train for us on this day, as nothing else would run for many hours, but I would be up very early the next morning to see what I could find. It's 5:21 a.m. on the next morning of May 31st, 2023, as my buddy Dakota came to pick me up at my hotel and told me that our early M441 was coming down the Yeoman subdivision and was already at Knights, which is just a couple miles north of Plant City. So we would very quickly get over to the Plant City platform to set up for him, as it runs its final miles out of Rice Yard in Waycross, Georgia, down to Yeoman Yard in Tampa, Florida. couple hours later, a northbound local would come out of Yeoman Yard and take the connection track here at Plant City and back up the Lakeland subdivision to Work Industries towards Winston Yard. About an hour after the first local passed, a second one would show up to switch industries north of Plant City along the Yeoman subdivision. After catching a few trains in Plant City, we would start to head north and see what we could find, and unfortunately, everything was quiet for multiple hours until we reached the middle of Santos siding along the CSX Wildwood subdivision just south of Ocala, Florida, where over the radio we would hear an L729 calling signals to the south of us. Now, I don't know why this train is considered a local, as its run from Winston to Brown Sand is over 300 miles long, but that was CSX's decision, not mine. On this day, L729 would have quite a nice lash up, with both the lead motors being original AC 4400s, with the lead motor still sporting the YN2 paint scheme. We would stay out for many more hours, but nothing else would show up in the time that I was down here, as we had to head back to the East Coast, as the next day we would have to head back to Georgia. But I hope to come back down here sometime in the near future, and maybe that time around I'll see more trains. On our way back to Georgia the next day, we would be able to make a few stops along the journey, our first one being at the Callahan Turnout as we waited on Southbound Manifest M457 out of Rice Yard in Waycross down to Taft Yard in Orlando, Florida. Of interest on this day's 457 would be its lead motor, CSX T5461, which is a Seaboard sticker unit. I had never seen this locomotive in person before, so I thought it'd be worthwhile to catch it. After catching M457 at Callahan, we would move on into Waycross as we would find M692 departing Rice Yard bound for Russell, Kentucky, as it would make the turn at Brunswick Junction onto the Brunswick subdivision. This is a new movement that CSX has been doing for a couple months now, as they have made a new connection track in Nahunta, Georgia off of the Brunswick subdivision and onto the Nahunta subdivision for Jessup and Savannah. Now this train used to run straight out of Waycross at the Jessup sub to Jessup and Savannah, but many of the sidings in between Waycross and Jessup are too short for today's trains. So now almost all the trains that used to head out of Waycross north in the Jessup subdivision will now take the turn at the Brunswick Junction just outside of Rice Yard up the Brunswick sub, then take the connection at Nahunta to Jessup and Savannah, which makes for an almost 35-mile long double track, which makes the flow of traffic a lot more smoother. Setting up just a couple miles outside of Waycross, M692's train has fully cleared the Brunswick Junction, and now he can speed up to maximum authorized speed. We would then move on over to Brunel Street, as northbound intermodal I-142 was either being routed into the yard or up the Thomasville subdivision, as earlier in the day, local L743, I believe, out of Brown Sand, Georgia, had derailed just north of Waycross on the Fitzgerald subdivision, which had taken out every single track, which meant no trains were able to go in or come out of Waycross via the Fitzgerald subdivision. I-142 was heading into the yard, here would come southbound manifest M441 after building its train together, now ready to blast off south for Tampa, with a freshly repainted GEVO number 5419 trailing second. A couple hours later, and we'd find ourselves just to the south of Araby, Georgia, as a southbound NS intermodal that I never got the symbol of would show up out of nowhere. We're now set up just to the north of Vienna, Georgia, in the middle of Norfolk Southern's Dooley siding, as northbound Manifest 152 out of Valdosta, Georgia, up to Brosnan Yard in Macon, Georgia, heads into the siding with quite the lash up on the head end. That lash up being BNS Sev Heritage 2 GEVO number 7685 and Union Pacific AC 4400 number 7280. .152 would be the last train for us on this trip, as we would wait for whatever it was waiting on for a while, but it would never show up, and we still had a 3-hour drive back home. So until next time, this is Georgia Rail Production saying so long from Dooley Siding in Vienna, Georgia, along Norfolk Southern's GS and F district.